Welcome to This Week in Education Law, where I share up-to-date court decisions from the perspectives of educational administrators and policymakers. This is episode 39. I'll introduce a recent case about a public school teacher who was fired by the school district because he had chosen to use the students' preferred names but avoided using any third-person pronouns to refer to the student as it conflicted with his religious beliefs. Let's first look at the background of the case. Peter Vlaming was a French teacher at West Point High School in the state of Virginia. He taught for 6 years, consistently earning positive evaluations. The school board even granted him continuing contract status. In the 2017 to 18 school year, a biologically female student decided to transition to a male identity. The court document referred to this student as John Doe. John Doe had previously been a student in this teacher's French classes and planned to enroll in French 2 for fall 2018. The teacher, in an effort to support Doe, asked all students to choose new French names to avoid drawing unwanted attention to the student's transition. Although the student in the class had already chosen a French name in French 1, so that Doe would not be the only one changing names. When Doe requested to be referred to with masculine pronouns, the teacher faced a personal dilemma. His religious and philosophical convictions held that gender identity should align with biological sex. To respect Doe's gender identity while staying true to his belief, the teacher used Doe's preferred names and avoided third-person pronouns altogether. In class discussions, the teacher would say, for example, "What do you think about John's answer?" or "Was John's answer correct?" The teacher communicated this approach to Doe, who seemed comfortable with the situation. When the teacher explained his reasons for avoiding the use of pronouns, the parent told the teacher that he should leave his principles and beliefs out of this and refer to Doe as male. Following concerns raised by Doe and Doe's parent, the teacher met with assistant principal to discuss the teacher's approach. The assistant principal told the teacher that he should be aware of the law. The assistant principal provided the teacher with documents from the National Center for Transgender Equality. It is important to note that this organization, the National Center for Transgender Equality, is not a legislative body, and their documents are not laws. During their conversation, the teacher again explained that using male pronouns to refer to a female was against his religious beliefs. The assistant principal's response was direct. The teacher's personal religious beliefs end at the school door to the extent that they conflict with the school board policy. Under the school board policy, the assistant principal said that the teacher's non-use of pronouns was insufficient. The teacher was instructed to use male pronouns or face job termination. A week later, the teacher met with the school principal. The principal told the teacher that he was required to use masculine pronouns to refer to Doe in any and every context. Failure to do so would lead to termination of his employment. Here, the message from the school administrators was very clear. Using the student's preferred name was not enough unless the teacher used the student's preferred pronouns. The teacher would lose his job. In another meeting, both the school principal and assistant principal repeated that the teacher was required to use masculine pronouns to refer to Doe and would be reprimanded for not doing so in the past. Shortly after, the teacher returned to his French class where students participated in a paired classroom exercise involving the use of virtual reality goggles. At one point, Doe was wearing the goggles and walking through the classroom while receiving instructions from a second student. Concerned that Doe was about to walk into a wall, the teacher said to the second student, "Don't let her hit the wall." Realizing his mistake, the teacher immediately put his hand to his mouth and finished supervising the activity. After the class, the teacher apologized to Doe, explaining that this is very difficult, and his remark was a spontaneous reaction to the risk that Doe was about to walk into a classroom wall and get hurt. Dissatisfied with this explanation, Doe withdrew from the teacher's class later that day. After the classroom incident, the teacher immediately reported the situation to the school principal. The school principal emphasized the importance of addressing the situation correctly. The principal said, "You know what you do to diffuse a situation like that? You say, 'I'm sorry,' and meant to say 'him.'" Later that day, the school principal recommended to the superintendent that the teacher be placed on administrative leave. The following day, the superintendent suspended the teacher pending an official investigation of his actions. 5 days later, the school principal issued a reprimand and a final warning letter to the teacher. The letter explained that the teacher's refusal to use masculine pronouns to refer to Doe had violated the school board's policy. Your refusal to use masculine pronouns has violated the school board's policy prohibiting harassment or retaliation against students or others on the basis of gender identity. The superintendent met with the teacher to discuss the terms of the final warning letter. During this conversation, the teacher said that he would continue to use Doe's preferred name, but could not use masculine pronouns to refer to Doe because his religious beliefs and conscience prohibited from doing so. The superintendent then recommended the teacher's termination to the school board. At a subsequent public hearing, the school board voted to terminate the teacher's employment for refusing to use the masculine pronouns and comply with administrative directives. According to the school board, the teacher's refusals violated policies prohibiting discrimination and harassment based on gender identity. Following his termination, the teacher filed a lawsuit against the school board, the superintendent, the school principal, and the assistant principal. The lawsuit alleged violations of free exercise, free speech, due process, and breach of contract. The circuit court found the teacher's claims insufficient, prompting him to appeal to the Virginia Court of Appeals. Unsatisfied with the appellate court's decision, the teacher petitioned for the Virginia Supreme Court to hear his case. The Virginia Supreme Court ruled in favor of the teacher. The court conducted a complex legal analysis focused on constitutional and statutory claims. The court opinion has 143 pages. Let's focus on the teacher's free exercise claim under Article 1, Section 16 of the Virginia Constitution. It's important to note that the teacher chose to sue under the Virginia Constitution rather than the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution because of the different levels of protection provided for the religious exercise. Long story short, the Virginia Constitution offers more robust protection for religious exercise. The Virginia Supreme Court's decision highlighted the importance of respecting individual religious beliefs in education policies. The teacher's refusal to use masculine pronouns for a transgender student came from his religious beliefs. The question is whether those beliefs caused him to commit acts that posed a substantial threat to public safety, peace, or order. According to Sherbert v. Berner, such acts must be evaluated under strict scrutiny to determine if the government's compelling interest could be satisfied by the less restrictive means. In an open, pluralistic, self-governing society, the expression of an idea cannot be suppressed simply because some find it offensive, insulting, or even wounding. This principle protects diverse thoughts, speech, religion, and opinions, ensuring that no government can lawfully coerce its citizens into pledging verbal allegiance to ideological views that violate their religious beliefs without a truly compelling reason. Moreover, the prohibition on government punishing protected speech is grounded in the belief that the best tested truth is the power of the thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market of free thinking, as stated by Justice Holmes in Abrams v. United States. In this case, the teacher avoided using third-person pronouns altogether and used the student's preferred name instead. He argued that being forced to use masculine pronouns was a compelled speech mandate, not related to the curriculum. The court agreed that the need for orderly school administration does not justify compelling a teacher to endorse an ideological view that violates his religious beliefs. The court noted that the concept of gender identity is among many controversial subjects perceived as sensitive political topics. Speech on such matters occupies the highest rung of the hierarchy of First Amendment values and merits special protection. Compelling an educator's speech or silence on such a divisive issue would cast a pall of orthodoxy over the classroom on a topic that has produced a passionate political and social debate. The court concluded that where the state's interest is to disseminate an ideology, no matter how acceptable to some, such interest cannot outweigh an individual's First Amendment right. What can school administrators learn from this case? This case highlights the delicate balance between respecting individuals' religious beliefs and maintaining a respectful and inclusive educational environment. It reaffirms the protection of free speech and religious exercise even in complex and controversial contexts. One more thing. The school board fired the teacher based on allegations of violating school policies. However, the policies in question did not explicitly mention pronoun use. Instead, the school's policies referenced Title IX, which itself did not contain any specific guidelines or policies regarding pronoun use. This lack of explicit policy on pronouns was a significant factor in the legal arguments surrounding this case because it raised questions about whether the school board's actions were justified under existing regulations. When it comes to gender identity, the interpretation of existing federal laws, particularly Title IX of the Education Amendment of 1972, has evolved over time. In recent years, there was a U.S. Supreme Court decision in Bostock v. Clayton County, 2020. Yes, the Clayton County here is the county in the state of Georgia. In this case, the Supreme Court held that discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity is a form of sex discrimination under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Although Title VII is about employment, this reasoning has influenced interpretations of Title IX, which addresses sex discrimination in education. The U.S. Department of Education's stance on this issue has varied depending on the administration. For example, under the Obama administration, the DOE issued guidance interpreting Title IX to include protections for transgender students. The Trump administration rescinded this guidance and took a narrower view, generally not recognizing gender identity as falling under sex discrimination protections. The Biden administration reinstated protections for transgender students under Title VII. While there is no explicit federal statute that defines sex to include gender identity, the interpretation and enforcement of existing federal laws, such as Title IX, has been subject to change based on the executive branch policies. Educational administrators should stay informed about the current interpretations and guidelines issued by the U.S. Department of Education and other relevant authorities. It is important to ensure your school's policies are in compliance with those guidelines and to be prepared to adapt to changes in federal policy. Administrators should also create an inclusive environment by providing training for staff and faculty on issues of gender identity and ensuring that the rights and needs of all employees and students are respected and protected.